let's continue this conversation. A recent report shows Georgia has led the nation in school shootings since the Sandy Hook tragedy of 2012. Everytown for Gun Safety, which is an advocacy group, documented every time a firearm was used on campus grounds. Nationally, there have been almost 100 shootings in 33 states since Newtown. 12 of those happened in Georgia. Some of those shootings were related to gang violence. Some were unintentional. Joining us in the studio now is Wendy Whitmire. She's with the Georgia chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. And also Sony Shepard is lead safety analyst of Safe Haven International, which is a nonprofit campus safety organization based in Macon. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
So first, Sony, can we talk about the validity of the study itself? Because there's issues with which school shootings they counted and which, I guess, they didn't.
Yeah, I think I love the spirit of the study. Let me just say that. And I think the spirit of the study is one shooting is too many. And so I'd like to lead with that. At Safe Havens, we've done research all over this. My career's been dedicated to doing this type of research. So when you're looking at numbers like this, you're really looking at definitions. What do we count as a school shooting? With the study that you just mentioned, not all of the incidents per se fall under the federal definition of school shooting, which is what we see, for example, Sandy Hook, Columbine, those type of instances.
And the federal definition is?
The federal definition is, it's really based on intent. And it's saying that someone who's actively shooting in a school with the intent on killing people or on school property. So they don't count suicides, which, by the way, that's what I love about that study, is that they did count
That's
suicides.
what you like about this current one that comes from Everytown for Gun Safety.
Yes, that they count suicides. And I think that's a very, very important point. However, there are some in that study that we would not typically define as a school shooting. For example, there's one at Horizons Elementary where it happened on a Saturday. Two people got into, or a group of people got into a fight on a basketball court at a school. That was a Saturday. We don't count that as far as school shooting in the definition.
Unless it's within school hours.
Not necessarily. Like, it could be outside of school hours, but weekends, gang-related incidents aren't typically in that definition.
All right. So, Wendy, let me take this to you. What do you think of, what does your organization think of as a school shooting? Does any firing of a gun on a school campus count?
Mm-hmm. It actually does. When we got our numbers, 12 concentrated shootings here in the state of Georgia, these were all on-campus gun-related incidents, 3 of which this year have resulted in fatalities, 7 of which have happened on college campuses.
You're talking about the ones that occurred in Georgia?
Yes, ma'am. And I think it's really important to look at those numbers and to say we still have a gun problem in our schools and on our college campuses. And we do have to look at the reasons behind why these shootings are occurring at such an alarming rate. So when we look at what the federal definition is and we look at what the state definition is, I think that Everytown's position is anytime there's a gun on a college campuses, there is the risk for a shooting. Now, the study that Everytown did, it is based on incidents that have happened on campus. We had a shooting at a high school just recently where a parent did shoot a student, and that did result in a fatality.
Although what's interesting to me, Sonny, is that 70% of these incidents were perpetrated by minors in this study, and most of them, I mean, nearly 2/3 of them brought that gun to school from home.
Yeah, and I think with this study, what I found most interesting is that, and I know with my research, a lot of deaths occur in Chicago, but that's not mentioned in the study. So I'm looking at the concentrated numbers and I'm seeing Southeast and I'm going, wait a minute. And when I look at the methodology, most of those numbers come from the media. And so as we all know, or law enforcement reports based on the media coverage, and we know that a lot of the things that are happening, some of them aren't reporting in the media. And I think it's unfortunate. I think that most of the guns that are being carried to school. Like I said, I think one death by firearm, by knife. I mean, in China around the Sandy Hook time, a lot of people don't realize that there wasn't a violent incident concerning knives. I mean, there are a lot of things that are affecting our kids in school. Our research has shown that there are more fatalities via traffic incidents than gun-related incidents in school. Now, are we saying is one more important than the other? Of course not. I think all of these need to be looked at. And so I think it's wonderful that, Moms Demand Action is focusing on one thing. We're focusing on a holistic approach. And I think if we merge our efforts, we can really do some great work in this area.
Well, let me bring it back to you, Wendy, because Moms Demand Action, that means that you must have some idea of what's causing this, or else you wouldn't be able to take action, right? What
Right.
causes school shootings? What causes a kid to bring a gun to school?
Well, we know that 2/3 of children who bring guns to school do obtain the guns from their homes, whether the parents are not safely storing the guns, but the children are getting their hands on them. That's one reason that guns are so readily available to our children. And many times, they will bring those guns to school as an answer to a conflict between them and another student, whether it's gang related. Whether, that seems to be our youth's solution to the problem of a conflict with another person. They have not learned proper conflict resolution. So they are angry children. They're children whose mental issues have not been addressed by the parents. And so it's a problem that begins in the home. And then it comes from the home to the schools. And there's not a whole lot that, there's not one specific answer to the solution to this problem. We just know that the readily availability of firearms to our young children is a huge problem.
So let me bring that to you, Sony. If we are isolating it to just shootings, and I would assume the easiest thing to do is keep kids from bringing firearms to school. Is that accurate?
Well, you can do that, but it's how you do it and how we implement these things. Not only should we have programs that limit guns in schools, and one thing that we always say is that schools are a reflection of the community. And so even on the way to school, if a child does not feel safe going home and to and from school, they're more likely to bring a weapon to protect them in the neighborhood, which ends up in the school. So when we're talking about putting in programs, those programs have to go in the neighborhood, what we call the school safety zone, which is about a mile out surrounding the schools. So when we're thinking about putting in programs, whether they're limiting guns, whether it's conflict resolutions, we have to go beyond the school walls and get into the community.
Which is more effective that we know of, educating the kids about this or educating the parents?
Well, we have 20 effective strategies that are free on our website that we researched with the Maine Department of School Education. And I think several things are very effective. One is educating the entire school community about conflict resolution, character education, preparing staff to engage more with the students, preparing students on how to engage with each other and not be so aggressive where we feel like we have to take a gun to school. Bullying programs. Again, if a student is bullied in the neighborhood, then they might bring a weapon to school to protect themselves. So we have to really encapsulate the school with all of these programs to protect everybody.
Why Georgia, Wendy? Why when you saw these results and you saw Georgia at the top of the list, were you surprised?
Actually, I really wasn't surprised. We have a heavy gun culture here in the state of Georgia. We are a red state. With the passage of HB 60 last
That's the
year,
so-called Guns Everywhere
the Guns
law.
Everywhere law, that did not help us. I think parents here don't safely store guns as much as parents maybe in other states. As I was saying, these guns are more readily available to the kids. They're also learning at much younger ages. And Jerry Henry was on yesterday's show.
He's with Georgia Open Carry.
Yes, he is. And one of the remarks that he made was that he teaches his 6-year-old grandson how to shoot a gun.
But he says that's for gun safety, so that the child knows
Right.
how to handle a gun safely.
Right. But one of the key things that he said was that he is the one that regulates how he teaches this child how to shoot a gun.
Right.
And why is he teaching this child how to shoot a gun? Is it for protecting himself? Is it for hunting? What is the purpose? And what is he telling the child the purpose is? So, we're telling our children, you can tell them different things about guns. You can say guns are used for hunting. Guns are used for target practice. So let's practice this together as a family. Or are you saying you have to have a gun because you have to protect yourself and I'm going to regulate it for you? And this is how we're going to handle this situation. There is an unbalance. There's this, black and white. And we need to really get away from that black and white, when it comes to our children, because they're becoming very confused, even though it's a black and white issue. Here in the state of Georgia, it used to be.
When you say black and white, I assume you mean all or nothing. Either we have guns or we don't.
Correct.
Okay. Let me bring that to you then, Soni, because I mean, we only have a minute left, but then how do we implement safety procedures if it's caught up in politics and rhetoric?
Well, the beauty of school safety is that you can be apolitical and still affect change. There are things, for example, weapons detection. We teach a whole class on how to detect if someone's carrying a weapon. We need no policy to do that. It costs nothing to really look at someone and see if they're going to harm you. And in most of the school shootings, people always said we should have known. They acted like this. There's a whole mental health component to this that, again, costs nothing. You don't need to enact a legislation for it. But just caring, I think when we get back to the core of society, and that's just caring for one another, especially with students, engaging them. How are you doing today? You don't look so well. They're more likely to tell you, well, someone's been bullying me, or I don't feel safe. And then we can really put something in place to help that child.
That's Soni Shepard. She's lead safety analyst for Safe Haven International, which is a nonprofit campus safety organization based in Macon. And we also spoke with Wendy Whitmire with the Georgia chapter of Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America. Thanks to both of you.
Thank you.
This is On Second Thought. I'm Celeste Headley.